Hey guys, welcome back to more political chatter. Today we will be talking about some new polling that we have from the state of Texas that is truly, truly stunning. So, from the University of Houston, they gave us a vast poll with many different matchups in the upcoming 2026 Senate race in the state of Texas. Now, this will be a crucial one. This will be one of them that does decide control of the Senate in 2026. You've only got a handful of states that we expect to be really, really close. I guess you could add Maine in there as well. And when you look for the Democratic majority, when you look at the path for Democrats to take a majority in 2026, it runs right through Texas. They would have to hold Georgia, they would have to hold Michigan, they must flip Maine, which I really expect them to do. They would have to flip North Carolina, which it looks like they will. And boom, there you go. Now they're tied up 49 to 49. Democrats will need 51 for a majority. Where do you look next? Well, you've only got two more states, Texas, and that's 50, and then Alaska. So Texas is absolutely crucial for the Democrats in 2026. And of course, it is an uphill battle. So when we saw this poll today, that shows every Democrat. Well, there's two, James Talarico and Colin Allred performing very well, right in the margin of error in most of these matchups. It was really, really shocking and a good sign for the Democratic Party here. So they polled every Republican candidate in this Senate primary against every Democratic candidate. So in the Republican primary, you have Ken Paxton, the very radical, far right, Trump aligned Attorney General. He's the one who said we should jail, arrest Beto O'Rourke for whatever, something with gerrymandering. You've got the incumbent Senator John Cornyn from the state, and yes, he has a primary. And we have the new candidate in the race, Wesley Hunt, the U.S. representative, who appears to be performing the strongest of these three challengers. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, you have the state representative, James Talarico, who is beloved in the National Democratic Party, has gained quite a following on social media. He's got lots of political skills. And you've got the former U.S. Representative, Colin Allred, who was the party's nominee for Senate in 2024, losing to Ted Cruz by 8.5%. However, he did really outperformed the national Democratic ticket of Kamala Harris, overperformed her by 5%. So, looking ahead at this 2026 Senate primary, it will be brutal, especially on the Republican side. Democrats, I believe, James Talarico will come out as the nominee. He is surging in the polls. We have only gotten a few polls, but in every single one, just a few weeks apart, he's adding 10, 20, 30% even in some cases to his numbers. He started at 10, now he's at like 45 already, and it's been only a few weeks. At the end of this, I think it's just a matter of name recognition and getting exposure. And I think that Talarico is a far better politician in every way than Colin Allred, in that he will handily win the primary. Meanwhile, who knows what the Republican primary is going to end up looking like? The Republican primary on this side is reminding me a lot like the 2022 primary for Senate in Pennsylvania. This one I remember really, really well. So, in this Republican primary in Pennsylvania in 2022, this was the Dr. Oz race. He won this primary for Senate. Trump endorsed, by the way, with 31% of the vote, just 31%, and he ended up as the nominee. There were three major candidates, as well as a bunch of many, many, many minor candidates. Well, in this primary, what do you know? You have three main candidates: Cornyn, Paxton, and where is it? Cornyn, Paxton, and Hunt, and then a long list of minor candidates. This primary was so brutal. In Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz won by just 0.1% when you round, or 0.07%, just an insane race. He won by 900 votes. It was so divided, so tight, and so brutal, and so nasty, with so many attacks at each other, that I think it's pretty agreed upon that this severely hurt Dr. Oz in the general election, and he would go on to lose that general election by almost 5% against a pretty weak candidate, John Fetterman. So this is what happens when you have a divided, ugly, ugly primary, just like what we're looking at in Texas. it looks like this, you've got Ken Paxton, who is, involved in scandal after scandal after scandal, involving his wife with an affair with a YouTuber mom with like 10 kids or something. Just weird. You've got Wesley Hunt. These are all Wesley Hunt is also a very attackish kind of politician. And John Cornyn, you can attack him on so much in a Republican primary for not being MAGA enough, which is what Hunt and Paxton will try to do. This will be an ugly primary. Paxton, Hunt, and Cornyn will not be kind to each other. If I know one thing about this race is that I can guarantee you that. Also, it would be an absolute free for all if Beth Van Dyne or Ronnie Jackson entered the race, other U.S. representatives, but we won't even consider that right now. So, all in all, I think in the general election, it will end up even different than what we're seeing from these early numbers. But let's get into this poll once and for all. In Talarico's numbers, he loses to Ken Paxton by 3%. He loses to John Cornyn by 3%. He loses to Wesley Hunt by 6%. Colin Allred loses to Ken Paxton by 1%, well within the margin of error. He loses to John Cornyn by 2%, and he loses to Wesley Hunt by 5%. Clearly, Wesley Hunt breaking 50% against Talarico and Allred is the strongest candidate. That I think I knew. I think we all knew even before this poll. However, when you look at these Republican primary numbers, sorry, wrong tab. When you look at these Republican primary numbers, Wesley Hunt is not really in contention. You've got him in this University of Houston poll. They also polled the primary. He polled at 22. Cornyn was at 33, and Paxton was at 34. Now, Texas has a runoff, so the top two candidates advance to the runoff. He doesn't even make the runoff. He doesn't even make the runoff in any single poll. He only makes the runoff when you take out Ken Paxton, like in this poll, or you take out John Cornyn, like in this poll, or you take out Ken Paxton, like in this poll. So it's not looking good for Wesley Hunt, but it's still so early. But the Wesley Hunt supporters should not be they're not going to be they're going to be thrilled at these general election numbers, but they're not going to be thrilled at his primary numbers, which is what matters first and foremost. So Colin Allred, it is clear he does better against Ken Paxton, and he does better against John Cornyn, and he does better against Wesley Hunt. Again, what we're seeing in the Democratic primary is James Talarico surging. As more people hear James Talarico, hear him speak, and know that he exists, frankly, he is absolutely skyrocketing as more people know that he exists. By next year, I think that he will be in the lead. And in the same effect goes for the general election. When you've got, so many independents who have heard of John Cornyn or Ken Paxton or Wesley Hunt, they're gonna, even if they're slightly left leaning, they're probably going to say those Republican names because at least they have heard of those names. If they have never heard of James Talarico, then you're not going to answer. You're going to vote for James Talarico. That just does not happen. So as they hear James Talarico and get behind him, I think Talarico's numbers will go up. So I wouldn't look too much into Talarico versus Allred specifically, as I am pretty sure Talarico will end up as the nominee, especially looking at his fundraising numbers, which are just insane. But what is important is that both Talarico and Allred are well within the margin of error against Paxton and Cornyn, not against Hunt, which is interesting because Paxton and Cornyn are by the far the front runners, and it really gives Democrats a new light, a new hope that they can flip Texas, which again is absolutely crucial. And the Democratic candidate, I think, really will matter. When you look at the trend from 2020 to 2024 in the presidential election, every state trended towards Donald Trump, towards the Republican Party. But Texas, at a trend of 8.1% in just 4 years, is one of the most rapidly, I shouldn't say that, is one of the most right trending states from 2020 to 2024, only beaten by California, Florida, and New York and New Jersey, and that is it. And Massachusetts. Wow, I did not know Massachusetts trended so far to the right. But anyway, when you look specifically at the counties in Texas, when you take a deeper look, and you even look at the 2016 to 2024 trend, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. You've got the Rio Grande Valley counties, these heavily Latino counties, voted heavily for Barack Obama in 2008, Barack Obama in 2012, Hillary Clinton, the Democrat, in 2016, even Joe Biden, but there is a now we're starting to see a trend towards the right here, major trend towards the right on the Rio Grande Valley, but they still voted for Biden heavily in 2020, but come 2020 and then in 2024, of course, you could see the trend from 2020. I mean, just insane. I mean, beyond belief, trends in some of these counties. Webb, Trump shifted this county by 26 points. Valverde, 17. Maverick, 28 points. El Paso, 20, which is a heavily populated area. Cameron, 19. Willacy, 15. Hidalgo, 20. Star, 21. Zapata, 17. Just insane. Something that, you see a statewide trend towards the Republicans here, but you see nothing to the extent to which the Rio Grande Valley, heavily Hispanic counties, voted for Donald Trump. So when it comes to Talarico and Allred, we know Allred cannot win this election, okay? Latinos found no and I must make note, I think that what will be most important in 2024 and 2026, excuse me, is not just winning Latino voters, but making them turn out to vote. And I think there is a huge opportunity for the Democratic Party to recapture the Latino vote with Trump's immigration policy. The racial demographic at least, that has shifted the most, sharply against Donald Trump throughout his presidency so far are Latinos. That's in basically every single poll. And it is because of the, immediate, extreme far right immigration policy that Trump has implemented with, not only continuing the horrible deportations of Obama, of Biden, of his first term, but making them so public and making it, publicly bringing ICE into these cities to shame these immigrants. Um, so they have a reason to vote, and I think that they will vote in 2026, but Democrats have to convince them that they have to vote, for them and not some independent or third party. So that's a great opportunity for Democrats to recapture that Latino vote. And they will need it. They will need it in Texas. So we know that these suburban counties around Dallas and in Dallas County are trending towards the Democrats. In 2016, you had Denton and you had Collin, won by Trump by 20 and 17 respectively. 4 years later, from 20 to 8 in Denton, from 17 to 4 in 2020. In 2024, they shifted back, Trump plus 13, Trump plus 11, but they're still not even near what they were in 2016, despite Hillary Clinton doing better in the state overall than Kamala Harris did in 2024. So we know those suburban counties around Dallas and in Dallas are shifting towards the Democrats. And they need to drive that turnout out as well. And I have no doubt Allred and Talarico alike will do just that. But what they will need to put them over the edge, Kamala Harris proved you can't just win those voters. You have to win the Latino vote as well. And that is what will be crucial. I don't have faith Colin Allred will do that. I do have faith that James Talarico can do that with a well-run campaign. I believe that if a Democratic candidate matches the energy and turnout and everything like that, that Beto O'Rourke was able to accomplish in his Senate race in 2018. Let's get that up, where he lost to Ted Cruz by 2.6%, just insane. With the trends since 2018, this is 8 years later now. That's insane. 8 years later in 2026, since 2018. With those trends, I think that Texas would be put over the edge, would flip blue. But they have to recreate what Beto O'Rourke did, and that will be a challenge because he was a phenomenal candidate at the time. So that's where things stand right now. quite an interesting race shaping up in Texas. So thank you all for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't already. That helps out a lot. Drop a comment as well to let me hear what your thoughts are on this video. Share this maybe, I guess. And I will see you all later.